Okay, I'm rolling again. We're good.
Okay, so as a lyricist, did you have any favorite song or part of the show that you really like?
As a lyricist, this project was particularly fun to work on because I got to immerse myself in the music of that era. So doo-wop, brill building pop, Sinatra, Nelson Riddle, sort of big band, popular song stylings. There's such a rich musical environment that this story happens in. And so usually my process is that I just bury myself in those styles of music while I'm working on the project, listening to it constantly, getting the rhythms of the language into my system, getting the rhythms of the music into my system. So working on the whole project was so much fun. If there was a particular song moment that I particularly enjoyed working on, I'm a huge Sinatra fan, and being able to write for the character of Sonny, who is sort of a Sinatra-like character, and being able to write songs in that voice was a particular pleasure. And working with Alan, who can nail that musical style in his sleep, made it even more fun. He would turn out these songs that sounded like lost classics of the era, and all I had to do was tap into that energy and find the right words that, you know, Sammy Davis Jr. would have used, or Tony Bennett. The particular song I'm thinking of right now is called One of the Great Ones. It's a song that Sonny sings, probably my favorite in the show.
How have audiences responded to A Bronx Tale?
We've had an amazing audience response to the show. All through the writing of it, Chaz kept saying to us, guys, just tell the story. It always works. Audiences will find it. They will love it. Don't worry. And while you're writing, you're always worried, are we telling the story right? Are we getting the characters right? But Chaz, he knew. Once we got this up in front of an audience, all the natural power of the story asserted itself. All the things we added gave it that extra fullness that we were hoping for, and audiences have been going crazy. We've been playing to full audiences ever since we opened, and the kind of response that you hear as they come out of the theater is the sort of thing that makes a writer's heart just soar, because we are pulling people into this story wholeheartedly, and they are leaving Manhattan of 2018 for the 2 hours that they're there and going to this other time and other place and coming back as if they had been on a trip.
Did you have any challenges making A Bronx Tale?
There are challenges in writing every musical. In A Bronx Tale, I think the biggest challenge was taking the grit and the realism of the film, which is something that everybody really loves about it, and finding a way to make that work within the more stylized Broadway language of the stage. I think there are some people who approach this saying, well, they must have sanitized it, or they must have made it weaker or not as real feeling. When they added songs, it's going to feel like grease, or it's going to feel silly. But what I believe we did, and what we worked very hard to do, because it was such a tough challenge to meet, was to make the music work with that grit, to make it work with the realism of the film, so that the moments that punch you in the stomach still feel like a stomach gut punch. And the music sort of makes it even more of a gut punch, because it deflects and distracts you until those hardcore, mob-oriented, street life moments hit. And then suddenly it's like, whoa, I was not expecting it to feel like that.
For someone who has never seen A Bronx Tale, the movie nor the musical, what would you say to them?
If you've never seen A Bronx Tale, you're in for a real treat. It's the story of a boy growing up, learning what it is to be a man in a rough environment, with two sort of guiding lights. A father who is sort of pointing him towards what we would think of as the good, but has some character conflicts, and another father figure who is pulling him towards a different kind of a life that we might think of as bad, but is also, in his way, a good person. And our character, C, is torn in both directions as he sort of begins to make moral choices for himself. The story then takes another turn when we start bringing in other elements of that period, but at its heart, it's the story of a boy growing up. It's a coming-of-age story. and a story of what it means to make choices for yourself, how those choices affect your life, and how the people that you meet and the choices that you make affect the person you become.
Probably along that same line, so you feel that that story makes the show relatable to audiences?
Absolutely. Even if you've never seen the movie, this is a story that you can relate to. It's not about mob life. It's not about street life. It's about character. It's about fathers and sons. It's about what it means to be a man, and it's about making choices. And these are things that everybody goes through growing up. Everybody, male or female, Italian or not Italian, born in that era or not born in that era, you will recognize the situations that our characters find themselves in. You will recognize the choices that they're making. You will see echoes of that period in the period that we're living in now. It feels immediate. It does not feel like a period piece at all. It feels like a slice of today that just happens to have taken place 50 years ago.
Would you consider the story to be, I'm going to give you some adjectives, dark, inspiring, uplifting? Like, what kind of adjectives would you use to describe it?
There are so many adjectives that can be used to describe this show, but definitely it has its moments of darkness, it has its moments of moral ambiguity, but it's also uplifting, it's also inspiring. There are moments of pure joy. There are moments that are kind of scary. It's one of the things that has made this story last as long as it has in so many different forms, and one of the reasons why it works for so many different audiences is that it really does capture almost every emotion you could feel. You laugh, you cringe, you cry, you blanch. Everything you could possibly feel in a show, you feel in the show.
I'm curious, Chaz's, in the film, his lines to see are like so signature, these life lessons that he's learning.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that stands out to you? Is there something like that in the show where it just like stands out to you? And if you, when you answer to her.
I know, I'm thinking. Chaz's script is sort of classic. So many lines from it have lasted forever. It's quoted endlessly. If you go anywhere on the web, you constantly see people using phrases and anecdotes from the movie as if they were their own. If I had to pick one that particularly stands out for me, it's not one of the uplifting ones or one of the morally inspiring ones. It's the line where there's a scene where there's a confrontation between two groups of characters, and Sonny ends the confrontation by locking the door and saying, "Now yous can't leave." And there's something about it that is so Chaz and so of that era and so satisfying that even if you've seen the film before and you know that line, when it comes, you just get that same feeling of yes.
That was good. Is there anything else you'd like us to add? Is there anything else you'd like to add about the show?
No, I feel like I have just...
Run out of gas.
Those were great questions. I think
Those really were. They really were. I got